Okay.
Rumors spreading around.
We are live, everybody. How are we doing today? Welcome to Moto Talk with Steve and Kim. I'm Steve, and that's Kim over there.
About the shack outside the green.
Sing it.
You know what I'm talking about.
Is that who you think it is?
Just let me know if you want to go.
Hey, we have a viewer. We're
home
really low. What do they call it? Low key famous. Like super,
like not at all.
Super low.
Like
how low can you go?
Only the other people we know on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, how you doing, everybody?
That's not true. We've had 400 or 500.
Oh yeah,
viewings of some of these things.
Same person over and over again.
Well, it's Dusty Prine. He likes to see his name.
It's Dusty.
Yeah.
Oh man, let's see. Let me get up to the comments here. Hey, John Hill.
Hey, John. How are you?
Happy Tuesday to you too.
Hi to Pam.
Hopefully you're doing great.
I'm sure he is doing great.
All right. Well, hey, we didn't know what we wanted to talk about today. So Kim had something happen to him last week, and we thought, well, we might as well just talk about that. And that's close calls while riding your motorcycles. I know we've done a show on something similar to that. But Kim had a little close call the other day, and so did a couple of our other buddies, and we're going to read those right now. Do you want to read these, Kim? We got Daniel up here.
For my specific incident, I want to back into it and talk about some of the reasons why it didn't happen to turn out badly.
Hey, Bill.
And we'll cover some of that, but I'm not the only one that's ever had this problem. Obviously, everybody
if you've ridden at all, you've had a close call.
This particular incident, though, was like a textbook situation that if it had some of the variables, even the small ones, would have been less productive, I would have eaten that van. So, I just want to back into that and talk about what saved my ass, basically. Okay. And we can do that.
You want to talk about that first?
Well, let's talk about the people that wrote in. I think Daniel's got a great one there.
Let me find Diddy's here. We're going to go to another page. Here we go. There's Diddy's.
Yeah, so he's talking about the fact that he sold his Honda Grom because it sits low, and he, like I am, inseam challenged, so we're not terribly tall.
He might even be a little more inseamed challenged.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. But in any case, he's talking about being in a roundabout and someone going all the way around the roundabout in the outside lane, which is, they're not supposed to do that.
Right.
They should be on the inside if it's a 2-lane roundabout for sure. But he's saying that when he was on the inside lane to the third exit, the driver was still continuing around, which means he was ready to leave, and the other driver continued forward and dang near hit him and knocked him off the bike. So my experiences in roundabout are similar, where I'm even on a single lane roundabout, and things can go bad if somebody goes around the person that's waiting and sitting
Sometimes
still.
People just assume you're going to you're going to go straight, you're going to get off on the first exit when you're coming, and then all of a sudden they're coming around.
Yeah,
maybe they don't have a turn signal on or anything, but you don't really technically have to have a turn signal on there to skip a couple of roads. You're turning.
Right. I mean,
in
it's
the roundabout.
Confusing if you turn your turn signal on, because then they'll think you're going to change lanes or something. Where are you going?
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, my best friend for my own riding style is aggression on a roundabout. I want to try to be the offensive person in a roundabout. Mm-hmm. I don't want to wait for somebody else to do something. Mm-hmm. I want to pick my spot, know where I'm going to go, and go there. And then get out of Dodge as soon as I can, because man, they're fraught with peril for sure.
Yeah,
roundabouts are no good.
And when you don't see anybody, you hit it a little faster.
Well, there's some of that, But,
we always try to speed up and get there before anybody else.
I don't waste any time in any roundabout. Yeah. So hopefully Diddy will have better experience with something a bit taller. Maybe he needs.
Yeah, the Grom is low. It's like a mini bike. You're lower to the ground. It is it's a smaller motorcycle, but it'll get you where you need to go.
Yeah, maybe we need to put him on that 950 Adventure that I worked on.
That would be good.
Probably have to have a ladder to get up.
Step ladder to get up on that bad boy.
But yeah. Anyway, we have another one that was submitted from Damian Mahan. Said scariest near miss on two wheels happened while he was sitting at a red light. And it's interesting because I was telling Steve, we had some customers come in that just completed the abate class.
Right.
And neither one of them had any experience at all on a motorcycle before they took abate.
Or on their own motorcycle.
Right. None whatsoever. And then as soon as they completed abate, they bought 2 big bikes, 1100 CCV twins, great big ones. It's a man and his wife. And they came into the shop. They wanted to check over. They wanted to make sure their bikes were good, and we put some tires on one. I think did some other stuff.
Yep.
But I was
Safety
having a
checks on both of
conversation
them.
with the man of the two, and he was telling me, "Yeah, my clutch isn't very good because I can't get it in neutral at a stoplight." And I said, "Well, I'll fix that for you, but if you're at a stoplight, you really need to leave it in first gear and have the clutch in because you might have to get out of somebody's way."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Damien's saying here. He pulled up to check the mirrors, and he saw that somebody who was probably distracted by a cell phone was closing a little too fast. And he did what most of us do if we've had some experience. You look right at them and see what they're going to do. You don't look at their car, you look at their face and see what they're going to do. And in this case, he must have made the judgment that she wasn't going to stop.
Right.
So he went ahead and went through and turned right, real quickly, and says that, he would have been little pieces of something in the grill that the EMTs would have to pick out had he sat there.
If he hadn't paid attention.
Yeah.
Because he said when he pulled off to the side, I guess on the side road, that she went right through the red light.
Yeah.
So
and that's never good.
Oblivious.
And I've talked to many, many people over the years that have had stoplight accidents that look just like that. And even some of them that I've heard people avoid where somebody 2 or 3 cars back hit the car behind them and then they pushed them up in front of them. So if you've
Chain
got
reaction.
If you've got a minute to get out of there by leaving it in first gear, that's always the best plan as far as I'm concerned. Let's see. John Gick's got a comment here too.
Hey, well, we'll pull that up there. Here you go. You can read it right there.
Head first into a car. Washington Meridian, oncoming traffic, turn left. Yep. Had a helmet on, went head first into the windshield. Well,
that was more than a close call right there.
Yes, indeed it was. But it looks like something that you just weren't going to be able to avoid if they fail to yield. It's very hard to get away from that, especially if there's no turn signals and you're signaling as best you can, and then somebody just ignores what you're doing and runs over you.
Right. Yeah.
That's never any good.
Sonics here has a actually pretty good point. This week, nothing makes up for understanding how people drive in the region where you live. It's a good idea for new riders driving a car at least for a year prior getting a motorcycle permit. Another thing that I think is a discussion is the fact that you can get a motorcycle permit and ride a motorcycle without taking any type of course whatsoever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I just think that blows my mind.
It is kind of crazy.
With all the other crazy regulations, you can get into politics and all that kind of stuff. But to go out as a 16, 17-year-old and just take a permit and drive and be able to ride a motocycle for a year before getting any type of endorsement or training is
and the rules were different
crazy.
When I started 50 years ago. I mean, you could be 14, or I think it was 15 and a half and get a motorcycle permit, but there were no cell phones then. People weren't doing the same things in the car. There was less traffic in general. There were way fewer motorcycles than there are now.
The cell phone thing is really absolutely awful.
It's awful. And I went to the
car is the same, Roger. Yep.
Yeah. I went to the motorcycle meet at Hendricks County, and I got some stickers that say something very nasty about people with cell phones.
Yeah.
And, you could stick that on your helmet and pretty much use it for every situation. John says, despite going head first into the car, his face is still perfect.
Oh, of course.
I guess that's a subjective thing, but,
subjective. Yes.
If maybe we'll get a picture of John and put it up here. You can make your own decision about
We'll
that.
have to go hunt a good picture down.
Yeah. So if you want to hunt the picture down, I'll talk about my incident. So, the reason I want to back into it is because there could have been any number of variables that would have changed the outcome. And, on the day that this happened to me, it was middle of the day, not a lot of traffic, 2:00 in the afternoon. You might, if you're looking, see what John's got out there. You may not have a lot. No, there's a picture of him right there.
Oh yeah. Pictures.
So, this is the obviously, very humble John Gick, who says his face is perfect, and that's what it looks like.
You can't see it.
I guess
I didn't.
okay.
I still got to sort that
I was
out.
gonna say everybody can make that judgment when they see this, but anyway, that's a good one. That looks like John.
All right, I'll grab it. Sure.
He's at a sprint car race, so that makes a lot of sense. Anyway, on the day that I had my incident, it was like last Wednesday, I think. It's 2:00 in the afternoon, sunny day, beautiful, not a lot of traffic. Cars in front of me, cars behind me. I'm on a familiar part of the road. I'm on old 267 between Brownsburg and Avon. I'm at a place called Northfield Drive where there is a turn lane on 267 where people can pull off and turn either way either west or east, and I was heading north. And there's a Northfield Drive that comes out onto 267 at a stop sign. There's no light there, no roundabout. And you can see traffic from a long distance as you're pulling up there who's coming up to that stop sign. There's no trees, no houses. It's not obscured by anything. So you could definitely see the traffic in every direction at that intersection. And I was riding along on my green bike that looks a lot like this red bike, same thing. And a CB750 is a heavy bike. They have adequate brakes for in modern standards. If they're working properly, and I'll come back to that. The brakes are halfway decent. But on this day, there was traffic in front of me. It's a 45 mile. I think it's a 45 mile an hour limit. And we were going right at about 45, and there were cars in front of me and cars behind me at a respectable distance. And it was just one of those things where it was a relatively safe environment where the traffic going in that direction, there was nobody turning left in front of me, headed toward me. And I saw a delivery van coming up to the stop sign, coming from my right as I'm going forward. And he stopped. And I saw him stop. He stopped probably 2 or 3 cars in front of me by the time he stopped. And I was probably 100 feet, maybe 150 feet behind the car in front of me, which sounds like not a lot, but it's quite a bit when you're going 45 miles an hour. And he stopped and waited. And when the moment that car cleared the intersection, he pulled right out in front of me. And I had no time to do anything. So I did what most of us do. And I pulled in the clutch and went to 100% braking. It was just one of those things where I didn't have time to do even an evasive action. I had to go directly to how hard am I going to hit this thing? And I got on the brakes, and, again, luckily the bike was in good condition. I was very familiar with the motorcycle. I was familiar with the road surface. I was familiar with, going that speed under those conditions. And when I got 100% on the brakes, I had it right at the edge of lockup on front and back. And if I was going straight, I could maintain that even for just the few seconds or milliseconds that I was all the way on the brakes. But I saw as I was moving forward, even on the brakes, I wasn't going to make it. I wasn't going to clear the back of that van. And so I just tweaked it a little bit to the right, hoping that I could clear it by the foot peg at least. And as I went past him, unloading the bike like that by turning the front wheel a little or leaning into it, unloaded the rear wheel began to slide. So I started doing a little bit of a dirt track from left to right, like you were going into a left-hand turn, sliding the rear wheel. And I slid past him. And when I got to the other side, I got off the brakes really quick because I didn't want to, if I was going to miss him, I didn't want to keep the brakes on and have the person behind me hit me. So I got past him, and the bike did a little jerk back upright. If I'd have been more sideways, I would have high-sided for sure. But I wasn't going that fast. It was probably only going maybe 10 miles an hour by the time it straightened up.
Okay.
So, that was, I can tell you more about what happened after that. I did a U-turn, chased him down, said a few choice words. And his excuse was that he had mirrored sunglasses on. He couldn't see me. Yeah. Which, I don't know. If I'd have been in the side of his delivery van, that would have been my problem, I'm sure. But it was a known company, and I'm probably sure my lifeless body would have been worth more money had I hit the side of it. But what I wanted to get to in relation to the variables that can go bad, we've talked here about tire pressures. If my tire pressures had been low, I'd have never been able to get 100% braking out of that bike. It just wouldn't have happened. The front end would have,
let alone the
washed
handling.
Right. The front end would have washed out. The rear end would have washed out. I might not have been able to tweak that little turn past the rear bumper. If my brakes weren't great, for some reason I didn't have a front brake. And we've got motorcycles in our shop now that have riders that say, I don't need a front brake. And we've got another one, I don't need a rear brake.
Or it's done on purpose.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They take it off the bike. And we got a beautiful chopper in there right now. It has no front brake at all, but that was typical at the time. So the motorcycle was as good as I could make it. It ran good. It didn't handle funny. It didn't do anything odd. And I was ready to make evasive action if I had to. And to Steve's point earlier, it's one of those things where you've got to be paying attention. If you're just looking at the scenery or watching the person in the next car or whatever, you're done. I mean, you just don't have
a
time
lot of
to do
people are
anything
just out for a joyride. If you're out on your motorcycle and you're enjoying your time on two wheels and the wind in your face and all that, and you've still got to you've still got to drive defensively 120%.
Yeah, and I think part of the other aspect of it is when I'm riding, I always have a helmet on. I don't ride without a helmet. I just don't. I have eye protection so that I can see at all times when I'm riding. I usually wear gloves, and I was wearing gloves on this day. I had a jacket on. I had proper shoes on, the work boots with steel toes, which, I've had other circumstances where I was wearing tennis shoes and had a bike get a little out of shape and whack my shins on the bike. And that can make you lose consciousness for a minute if you hit it hard
you
enough.
Can whack your toes.
So you have to be careful not to do that. So if you're not wearing all the gear, at least be wearing some of the important gear when you're getting into that, which would be proper shoes, probably gloves, probably a jacket of some sort, and absolutely a helmet with eye protection.
Right.
And if you don't have all those things, it adds up to a bad situation. And again, some of the other things we've had with bikes in the shop, maybe they're not in the best physical condition from a suspension point of view. We had a guy ride in this last week, and you could grab hold of the rear, catch bar on the back of the bike and push it down, and it would bounce for like 10 minutes. It would just sit there. No shocks at all. The front shocks were not much better. They had no fluid in them at all.
That one would have went straight into the car.
Oh yeah, it would have crashed for sure. And I'm not picking on the guy riding it. I'm just saying that if he had been riding that motorcycle, if I'd been riding that motorcycle under the same circumstances, I'd have put it right into the side of that van. So it's just one of those things where, because we try to tell people what we really think when they come in with a motorcycle, like you had a conversation today with one of our customers and said, look, I wouldn't ride it at all.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't pay attention to that. I don't know.
Yeah, this particular one was a small sport bike, but it was a Ninja 250, and it had zero front brake, and it was ridden to the shop that way, and it was brought in for a safety check, and we did the safety check, and obviously it had no front brake, so
it wasn't safe.
It wasn't safe. There were many other things that weren't safe either, but this particular person was going to go on and probably is going to go on a trip, whether the parts come in or not for it. So, it's a touchy little situation when you're trying to tell someone about their bike, and not offend them, at the same time.
Yeah. And I had a chance to look at this bike. I didn't work on it, but I did have a chance to look on it.
My nephew, he's mowing around the house today.
Yeah, if you can hear that. So I had a chance to look at this bike, and it had been in a prior crash. It's a sport bike, like Steve said, and it's the kind of sport bike that has more or less rear set foot pegs, even for the normal rider. It has cast aluminum mountings for the frame where the foot peg and the brake are all mounted to the same thing.
Right.
Whoever this person
and then
was,
mounted to the frame, right?
Yeah. And so whoever this person was,
most of you get that one,
broke it when it fell over at some prior crash.
Yeah.
Broke that casting
straight in half.
And when they broke the casting, they must have gone to someone who had some skills, but when they took it to them and said, I need you to help me fix this, they took some aluminum diamond plate, which is not very strong at all. It's just, 60 thousandths thick. And they cut out a piece of diamond plate that was about the same physical size as the foot peg mounting and bolted it to the outside of that thing. So the brake, the foot peg is rocking around on that.
Yeah, it's kind of flexing back and forth, and the piece that's broken still has the split, and it's moving inside there.
So not only does your foot move around on the peg, which is not good all by itself, but the foot peg and the brake are flopping around on the right side of that motorcycle. And if I was going to have, if I had to choose, if somebody had a gun to my head, you got to either have the shifter side or the brake side flopping around. I'd have the shifter side flopping around.
Yeah.
And in this case, the person doesn't seem all that concerned.
And that's the only brake they have.
Yeah. They don't even have a front brake.
Yeah.
Bad
deal all the way around.
These are very bad ideas. And I just want to make sure, as I've said before, when you walk out of your house, like I said, I've got my x-rays of broken bones hanging in there when I'm looking out there.
Yep.
But if you don't pay close attention to the motorcycle you're riding, you could be in real trouble.
I would say that, yeah, there's some other things we could say about that, but the just doing the safety check, which we'll probably do a show on this, ever so often, but doing that safety check on the bike is a huge deal. And then while you're out riding, you have to ride 120% defensive riding. And you have to assume, like someone said earlier, I don't know if it was Sonic or if it was Dusty or Roger, so one of those guys, you have to expect that they are going to pull out in front of you.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
And even if you think that they're looking at you, they could be looking past you. One thing I was going to bring up about your situation is I wonder, even though you were behind the guy that was in front of you 100 feet or so, if you're riding in the left lane, which is what I do, so I can stay in that guy's mirror, he may have just been watching the car behind you.
Oh, that could be.
And skipping past. And then all of a sudden he sees that car go by and he thinks he can gun it. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're there.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I can see the logic of riding in the left side of the lane closer to the center. But my solution to that would be riding on the right side of the lane because I want to be able to see around him and what's coming from the right.
Yeah.
And I'll pay attention to what's in front of me, but I'd rather be on the right side of the lane for two reasons. I want to be able to get out of Dodge if somebody's doing something coming toward me. So I don't like to be on the inside lane.
Yeah.
And again, the other thing is don't be in the middle of the lane. You got to pick one side or the other and think toward it. If you're in the middle, you're going to be in the oiliest part of the road because cars drop oil on the road and it's not good. And I think that probably played a role in my ability to slow down as hard as I did, because if I'd been in the middle, it would have been slipperier.
Yeah.
If that's the right word.
Yeah. Sonic on YouTube brings up another good point. And what I got out of what he was saying was a lot of new riders, they pick up these cheap bikes, that are not in very good shape. Yeah. Right. Which is kind of what he's saying there.
Yeah.
And so some of those riders are actually bringing them to the shop. As I've been posting out, we do see these safety checks, and even though we're 3 months out and we're not able to fix it, at least we can tell them what's wrong with it so they can find someone else to fix it.
Yeah. And without getting, preachy about it, to that point about, hey, we all think we're immortal and we can spend a little money and get something. My suggestion would be, if you've got $500, buy a 250 dirt bike and ride that on the street. If it's street legal. Don't go out and buy a 550 Honda that's been all hacked up and chopped up with no brakes and crappy circumstances for the same $500. Get over yourself and ride something that isn't going to kill you.
That's true.
That's just my position.
Yeah, that's true. I'll while we have a little bit of time, I'll mention something that you and I watched earlier today, and that was when I was following Keith Carlson's nephew up the tail of the Dragon. He was on an R6 and I was on a 75 CB750, and we were kind of being aggressive going up the Dragon, and he made a small mistake of leaning the bike over to a little too far on a kind of a cambered left turn, and basically caught his foot peg, which lifted the rear tire up, right? And so he went into a skid, and luckily he was going in toward the mountain into the ditch instead of off the off
yeah,
the
that
cliff.
would have been really bad. Different place
deal.
On the Dragon, it would have been a lot worse.
Yeah, and so to miss him, and we were I was behind him, but on the right side of him, and as he started skidding off, I hit my brakes almost immediately. It was almost like a reflex, and I almost hit him. I really hit him too hard. Now that you look back at it, but again, it's a split second thing.
And you can see that you had exactly the same reaction out of your motorcycle that I did. You can be all over the front brakes, but if the rear brake breaks loose, it's going to try to come around you. And you can see it in that video that your rear end is trying to come around.
If you want to see that video, I'll try to post it here in the comments in a minute when Kim starts talking again. But anyway, I did a little fishtail actually 3 times, and then finally I think that my dirt bike skills kind of kicked in, and I was totally ready to go off into the ditch as well, but I just hit that white line, and it was a lucky situation for me. But Keith's nephew was fine. He stood up and he wasn't too happy about what happened.
I think he described it with the F word.
Yeah. He did. And he's a good rider too.
And I
so
think
it
most
can happen
of us
to anybody.
would do the same thing.
Yeah.
I want to comment on Keith's comment here. Send it, life is short. It is, but that's a dirt bike in that picture. And if you're not riding it on the road and you can go crash in the dirt, you got a lot better odds to survive if you're doing that than if you don't.
That's true. That's true.
But you got to keep it all in mind. And again, it came really close to happening to me. And I'll be honest and say I'm just almost downright cocky about my ability. I'm knocking wood as I'm saying that, to avoid accidents because I've been doing it for so long. But this one was really close. And if there would have been any variables different than what I experienced, it would have been really ugly.
Yeah.
So you're going to be able to show that?
I'm just going to copy the link if I can, copy link address, see if that works. And then I'll post it here in the StreamYard comments. I don't know if it works or not. See if it does. So yeah, I think that's it. If you go to it, and you might be able to click on that link, you might not. Let me know if you can, because there's some things about this StreamYard that I haven't really learned how to use yet. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much our show for today. We just wanted to kind of talk about that close call situation that Kim had, and maybe a few of yours, and just kind of put some ideas out there for you to think about while you're riding, and just always be riding defensively if you can. So do you have a tip for the day?
I do, but I want to say something else to that. I think some of us can take for granted the fact that it's been a while since some people have even been out of the house at all because of the COVID lockdown and some of the other things that are going on.
Right.
And that means that they probably haven't ridden as much as maybe they should have if they're really conservative about how much exposure they want to any kind of possibility they'd get the virus. And there are people out there like that who don't want to leave their house.
Absolutely.
And if they're suddenly out riding after they haven't done it for a long time, that's another variable. Even if they're in the car, they probably don't have as much experience driving as they would have in a normal year. Right. So you got to think about that too. I mean, I don't want to overcomplicate it because it's not going to keep me from riding. But I will say that after that event for me, I was still a little shaky for the next hour.
That's probably the closest call you've had in a
long time.
Quite a while.
I mean, it was really, really close.
I know you did have a roundabout experience a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was no good. That was an actual crash, but I didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, my tip for the day is something that it might seem ordinary to you, or you probably have them around. And if you aren't using them, I recommend that you do. It's this little thing right here.
Thanks, Bill.
These are great for plugging
Look at
holes.
that. We're going golfing after the show, guys.
We are. This keeps 300 yards of gasoline from leaking out of the hose that you didn't have anything to stick in there if you don't have this. Same thing with vacuum hoses. Same thing with some other
gas
things
stopper.
You can do it. And you can buy about 1,000 of them for $2 and throw them away when you're done. So yeah, you can cut them off or break them off or whatever. And it's real easy. But get the wooden ones. Don't get the plastic ones.
There's your tip of the day and all your other tips of the day from everybody else. Hope you had a good time. We certainly did. I think we're going to try to have Keith Carlson on next week.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Keith and his excellent work with not only customizing motorcycles, but the specialty area of two-stroke bikes.
He knows a little bit about the two-strokes, you know.
He's semi-talented.
I have to show him a few things here and there, but
yeah, he comes to the shop to get some knowledge.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and by the way,
and pick on all of us.
Clayton got ASE certified today.
Oh, Clayton's ASE.
Yeah. I mean, we're saying something else, but he's ASE certified.
He's got the documents 31. Ben Davis.
Yeah. So
and he only has 2 days of school left too.
Right.
So that's pretty scary. We got to find him a plan of action here.
Yeah, we're already talking about why aren't you nervous?
Thanks, Sonics. Thanks, everybody. We will talk to you later. All right.
See you in a week.
Have a good one.